All right, let's get started. So, this is part two of our sleigh in Notion, where we help put Santa's sleigh into motion. Um, Today we are covering the Notion page tree, although technically Notion just calls it the sidebar, but a lot of applications like this like to call it a page tree. So that's what we're going to go ahead and call it. All right. Um, Here we go. So, we got a call from Mrs. Claus last week saying, "Hey, thanks a lot for getting us rolling in Notion, but we've had quite a bit of content get added without really any organization, and that is uh, not too surprising for anybody who's used a documentation or a content management system or a knowledge base type of system." So today, we will be walking through a few items. I made a private page to outline what we'll cover. We are going to talk about team spaces, links and layouts, searching and access or sharing, specifically restricting access. So um, I'll get started. Okay. So the first thing that we'll do, with any group of folks who are using a tool like Notion or Confluence or SharePoint is it's okay if if things start to get disorganized, and in fact that usually indicates quite a few things, a few different signals we can look for around what content people want to be adding, what content people are struggling to add. So we don't like to uh, tell people, don't add anything. We have to come up with a process first. We need to come up with an exact plan. That might be necessary in certain situations, but for most workspaces, most workplaces, you can be a bit more agile than that. You can iterate and refine. So it's very nice that Mrs. Claus gave us a call back and said, "Hey, can you provide some more help here?" So, in situations like this, what we like to do is look at what sort of things were added, and that is a natural indicator for different constructs that we might want to introduce. I did a quick scan of some of the items that were added in here, and we'll do a review of that right now. Um, and it seems like we're going to need some team spaces and some different links and layouts. So that's what we'll be covering today. So last time we had our bulletin board with our chaos report and our all important hot cocoa schedule. We had this as a synced block, a synced Notion block that we have in other areas. But it looks like the folks over there have added quite a few other things. So there's nothing underneath the bulletin board, and uh, often, the reason I call it a page tree is because you can have nesting all the way down, and there's this hierarchy. Um, it's nice if you go into a page, you could look through and see, oh, okay, here are sub pages, but you can also do that from the sidebar here, just to get a sense of what sort of content are we dealing with. So as I go, I'll look and see, okay, so a lot of stuff was added underneath the reindeer station. A lot of stuff was added underneath the elf operations. And I don't expect there to be too many nested pages underneath here, but as I do this sort of lightweight, audit, if you will, I'll just click a lot and see, okay, how deep are we dealing with here? And it looks like under the workstations, we've got quite a few items that have have nested pages, and in this Santa operations. The nesting that we see here is an indicator that perhaps a team space might be helpful for some of these groupings of content. So I said we would talk about team spaces and links and layouts, and so let's look at the reindeer station. So our reindeer station has several pages beneath it now. We've got, it looks like somebody made a database, which we're not going to dive into databases today, but I think later this week we'll go ahead and give the elves a rundown of how to really set up your databases in a way that enables you, um, more than just it being a glorified table or list, because you can do a lot of very cool stuff in Notion with your databases. Um, so let's do that. How can I create a new team space? Um, we know we've got our private section. We know we've got favorites section, and we have our team spaces here. I could, from the ellipsis menu here, um, change some of the settings. Move this. Say I want team spaces above private or whatever. But I can also create a new one here. This is not the only way to create a new team space. You can also, in your workspace settings, go to your team spaces tab and do a few things. You can decide what are your default team spaces. So these are ones that all workspace members will automatically join. You can limit who can create team spaces. So for some organizations, you go away for a week or two and you come back and there's 12 team spaces, that didn't exist before, and all of them have one page underneath. So if that's the kind of situation, this is an easy governance bit that you can turn on and off and say, hey, only workspace owners can do this. Your manage team spaces section will show you all team spaces that you have in this workspace and the ability to add a new one right here. When you add a new team space, you can do a few things. You can change your icon. So maybe we want a reindeer, and maybe there's an emoji for that. No, maybe there's one for deer. Great. Um, and we'll call it the reindeer station. That's what it was called organically, in the Notion pages that we had in place. So why not? You can add a little bit of some description, some details about that team space, but more importantly is this permissions tab. And I know, maybe I'm different than some people don't like to click on these little tooltips, these little onboarding suggestions, but I often will click on those to get a refresher as to what feature am I dealing with, what does this look like? And Notion's reference documentation is fantastic. There's a lot of good examples. They do a lot of onboarding along the way to help you learn about anything that you might not know, and get quite a few details about whatever concept you're looking for. And they do this handy little, hey, this is only a 9-minute read. So that I highly recommend, whether it's Notion or Confluence or whatever. When you have these little question marks of what is, learn about team spaces, go ahead and give it a click and find out, anything that you otherwise didn't already know. The permissions tab, so on that document that I had opened up, it covers permissions, but also they give you nice little helper text. By default, which is funny because there's an option called default. But when you go to create a new team space, open is what is auto selected. And this is that anybody in your workspace can see and join it, but they're not going to be in there by default. That might make sense for some organizations, and you might want to set it as default for others. For the North Pole crew, I'm gonna create them as default because, I would I would like everybody to see what's happening without having to go and search the different team spaces that exist. That is a potential area of confusion. You can be building out documentation, and people are saying, "Hey, where is that? Where are you adding all of that?" And, that is that is generally, confusion caused by this setting here. You can Anybody can see and join it, so you think, okay, this is great. I've done my job. But if it's something that you want everybody to be a part of, and this is mostly for workspace owners, people who are administering, the whole organization's Notion instance, Notion workspace, uh, they're going to make that call. They're going to be the ones who are best positioned to give that guidance. So for these, I'm going to just add them as a default workspace, and you'll see when I did that, it automatically added this new workspace in this default section. Now I could remove that, and that would change this from default to open if I updated that, but I'm not going to do that. When you create a new team space, it immediately appears on the left-hand side here, and it gives you this team space home as a default. Now, there's a few things on here, and we'll actually touch on some of them. You'll see this is a different kind of layout than what you have by default. This is a two-column layout where you can uh, change the dimensions at play here. And just like any tool that has a lot of capabilities, you'll find some things can be frustrating, like getting this bar to drag. Well, what if I accidentally click this plus, or what if I accidentally okay, well, just undo it. If you accidentally click something and move it around again, it's a usability quirk. But any feature or any product that has a lot of features has to figure out how to allow you to do that. So we always try to help people. Don't get frustrated with it. Just take your time, and you'll get more and more comfortable with whatever tool you're using. So I made one for Reindeer Station, and I can do a few things here. I can just drag this whole page over this page and all of its nested pages, which probably is what I want to do. I could also have said, I don't need this top level page. I just want to bring the reindeer fleet or the health checks over. And this is part of this page tree or this Notion sidebar, is that you can just drag these things around and all of the nested components are going to come with it, no problem. Um, so that's how we can very easily create something that says, okay, reindeer are now scoped to this. The reason that Notion likes to give you this team space home as a default page is because a workspace itself, you see when I click it, I'm not taken anywhere. So this workspace item in the sidebar is not a page by in and of itself. It is purely a folder or a hierarchical construct that doesn't have meat behind it. So what we like to recommend for any team using Notion is any team space that you have, go ahead and make a team space home. That is a helpful construct because then people will very quickly be able to understand outside of whatever 300 character description you might have given that team space. Uh, this lets people have a consistent home, and so what we'll do here is I'll delete this page because we don't need that default one, and instead create a new one called reindeer home, something like that. I like to drag these at the very top, and if you want, you can you know uh, do one sort of consistent icon for all your home pages. You can do one that's special per that team space, whatever makes sense. This now you're in a position where do I nest things beneath home? Do I have them as siblings of home? There's no right answer to that. The point of and the point of this training is to show how teams need to take ownership of this organization. There's no single right answer for how to organize, and this is what you'll find in any of these tools. There's no one right answer. So if the team who is creating the content and consuming the content doesn't feel empowered to make those changes, then you'll always have a confusing setup. So for us here, what I will do is I'm just going to move all these to be siblings, and we'll figure out a good way to organize them. But you'll see I'm just grabbing each of these pages, moving them to the top level, and now I'm left with this empty reindeer station page that used to be underneath workstations, but now we have a reindeer station, and it lets me move this one to trash. So what we had underneath our workstations is now its own team space for reindeer station. That's one item. So let's keep going with it. Before I dive into, how can we organize this? How can we change these layouts? Let's, at the very least, because who knows how long we have before the elves before you elves lose your attention, and get off track. So the big thing here is having clear areas for content creators and consumers, um, clear boundaries around where I'm adding stuff or where I can find stuff, and uh, that allows for iteration, but without global chaos. So if it becomes chaotic in the reindeer station, okay, at least it's encapsulated to that one area. Similarly, we will have elf operations is an interesting one. So let's see what they started to do here. Oh, great! How elves use this space. So we can, okay, check your shift, refer to the directory. So there's a lot of cool stuff in here, and it feels like the elf operations itself is worthy of workspace, or of a team space rather. There's no way for me to, one click turn the, well, I guess there is. Wow, caught me. When did they add that feature? So you can actually take a page and turn it into a team space. We could have done that with the reindeer station, but we can do that with elf operations. And this is why it's always nice. It can be frustrating, especially when I work with a teammate, and we've been working with Notion for whatever 2, 3, 4 years, and I'll go and click on things almost exhaustively, pretty regularly, because they add new features and they update and try to make it a better tool with every release. So we can, with one click, create a team space. This will move this page into a newly created team space along with people who already have access. So let's do that. Automatically, it was added. Okay, we have one member. I can change the settings. So here are my members. Here's some security settings. Who can invite? Who can edit the sidebar for reorganizing pages or adding new pages? I must, or I really should also check the general settings to look at the descriptions, or to look at the permissions. For this one, I'm going to change it to a default team space. And these modals on modals, they can be annoying, but they're really telling you something. They want to make sure you're not doing something you don't mean to. So yes, I do want elf operations to be its own team space, and I do want it to be a default for everybody. I'm going to create a new page just like I did for the reindeer station. The way I do that, I could do it a few different ways, but I like the add to elf operations. Or in this case, maybe we'll just rename this. So elf operations home, add icon. Let's go with the recent home. Um, and then I'm in a similar position where I could decide, okay, does everything really need to be nested underneath this, or does it make more sense to nest things differently? For the elf operations, we're going to have a few different types of items because elves do so many fun things. Um, like building toys. So we have train station. Does the train station deserve its own team space? Maybe yes, maybe no. For these folks right now, I would suggest no, because this is more of a subset of what the elves do. So I will just move the train station up underneath elf operations, and perhaps it makes sense to do a new page called toy making. That, that's probably hyphenated, isn't it? When I do this, I get this, great ever present every app build this with AI. Thanks, no thanks. I'm going to just make a new blank page called toy making and drag train station underneath it. When I dragged it in the sidebar, I can now see it's nested underneath toy making, but it also popped up here immediately. So anything that exists in the sidebar as a subpage also is going to exist somewhere on this page. Same deal with your elf operations home. And this is where layouts can become very helpful. So for the elf operations home, I might want to have a two column section where on one column I will have how elves use this space and all of these ordered list blocks, which if I can select them, then that would be great. There we go. Drag and drop, pop them underneath here. And then I'm going to put something else on the other side that we remember from last time. I'll type slash HEA heading 2 called, you know, sub pages or pages. And I can just take all of these right here, do a drag, put them underneath pages. And now I've got um, a construct where I can say, okay, what's important is how elves use this space and the pages underneath. I might decide, some stuff in here I actually don't need as a sub page. I want it on the top level page, and that might be the directory. It might be the workshop rules. So I can come into the workshop rules and say, all right, cool. This is a bunch of good stuff in here. These are the rules. That's great. Let's just grab all of this, and I don't want the stuff at the bottom yet. So I'm going to cut it with a Command X, and I will say workshop leftovers or something like that, because I just took everything out, and I actually want to put down here workshop rules, paste it in. You'll see that that actually kept me in my two column area, which is not what I wanted. And this is common in Notion or anything. I can easily just cut that again, make sure, where am I down here? Okay, now I'm no longer in the two column, and I'll just paste it beneath. So layouts are very helpful. They can be powerful. They can also be annoying and frustrating. But as you get a hang of it, you'll realize it's pretty easy to adjust as you move, um, and and you can always use your handy Command X or Control X, Control C, Control V, and Control Z or Command Z to undo. We do that all the time. We are getting low on time because, again, we've got limited attention span when there's hot cocoa being served and all of that. Within here, we have our HQ. I'm going to reorder that to be on the top. So, and I know I'm not diving too deep into a lot of specific functionality outside of what we might have already seen from last time. But the sidebar, this page tree, I'm I'm belaboring the point of reordering and nesting and all of that because it's critical to be comfortable moving around and reorganizing. Workstations, we don't need this anymore. I'm going to move it to trash. Uh, North Pole HQ, well, we don't have a a North Pole home inside of our inside of our HQ team space like we do for our elf operations and reindeer station. So I want to have some consistency, and again, this is where the iterative or agile, flexible mindset goes a long way. There's no single way to be organizing this, but as you find a pattern that's helpful, like, okay, our reindeer home, our elf operations home, our North Pole home, it makes it much easier to onboard a new workspace member. So, say you've got, you know, a South Pole elf who's now, working at the North Pole. They don't need a 2-week training on how to use each team space. They can start to just say, oh, okay, the elf operations team space, I'm a member of that. Of course, there's going to be a homepage. And of course, there's going to be some sort of a list around how to use this space. It was called space abstractly before. Now we can say specifically, this is a team space. Um, let's go up to that private section, or I moved private below. That's team spaces. Links are it's funny because you have in our alpha, these pages are links. But if we wanted to have our North Pole home say, okay, well, what do we want to direct people to? I can click this plus and I can scroll through all of these and you'll see, okay, embed a sub page. That's not quite what I want. I want a link to a page. So a lot of times you'll have some sort of headquarters, some overarching team space. And in here is where it's helpful to start to point to your other team spaces. And just having the reindeer home, just having these links isn't, especially helpful. So you can also, from within your elf operations home, I can, and so also that 2 column, I can just drag reindeer around. I can do this. Um, beneath the elf operations home, I could decide to use what I learned last time and say, hey, these here, I actually, I want this to be a synced block. I think I might need to do um, turn it into a synced block. There we go. I can copy this, go back to my North Pole home, and right underneath my elf operations home, I can put in what that synced block is. And so we're synced across for those homepage primers. And this is, very early start to what your North Pole HQ home will look like. But what we end up having is a sort of entryway where you walk into the North Pole and you can look at your directory and say, okay, this is this section, this section, this is what they do here, this is what they do here. But I don't have to have all of that inside of my North Pole HQ team space. I can delegate and I can actually do different levels of ownership at the team space level to say, hey, Sparky is the owner of the elf operations home, and well, let me look at my directory, my elf directories, and Spruce is the owner of the reindeer station home. Actually, stable assistant, maybe it's Pip. We're at 12:30. I'm going to just do one or two things quickly before we wrap up. If I didn't know where the elf directory was, which maybe I didn't, I want to show the search. So I can look up directory and it'll show me anything that matches directory, or I can look up reindeer and it will start to show me all of the things that line up with reindeer. Reindeer home is first, reindeer fleet is second because they have reindeer in the title and in the workspace. All of these are showing up because they're in the workspace and they have it inside the page somewhere. You can do all sorts of sorting. You can do filtering. So I only care about the title. I only care about within the team space, or I can say, what do we have in the North Pole HQ or in the elf operations that is still related to reindeer? I can do that kind of search, you know, pretty nicely, all by just clicking on the search, or just like we covered last time, when you hover over these items, it gives you a nice keyboard shortcut, so Command K. The last thing to touch on um, is the access and sharing. So if we look at the Santa operations, welcome to the Santa operations homepage, the command center for all. Whoa, okay, so only Santa is permitted to edit this page. So that is where I can start to go to this share, and I will make this into a team space, but we're over time already, so I'll just show it at the page level. And you can do this at the team space, at the workspace, but at the page level, it's very common to do different levels of access, either edit or view access. You can say, hey, everybody in our workspace has full access, edit, suggest, comment, share, or just edit, or just comment, or just view. And so for this one, maybe I'll say, yeah, everybody can view this, change access and unlink share settings. So this is saying, hey, I'm not going to inherit my parent sharing settings anymore. And yes, that's exactly what I want. But I can say everybody in the workspace, can view this, but really only the owners of this team space can edit this. Members can comment. So you have a level of granularity with your sharing and access controls that's pretty deep, um, and allows you to have lightweight but tight governance on different content that you might be creating or sharing. And that gets especially important as you start to have relational databases across areas, or if you have, you know, you can actually have this, anyone on the web with a link can view this. These sorts of things are really easy to set up if you know where to go, and if you have your team spaces and your groups structured in a way that makes sense. So I'll move this back to everyone at n-santa can view. That's what we wanted to cover today. It's still a little disorganized, but at least there are some boundaries on that chaos, on that disorganization, where elves now, as they are editing things in the elf operations, yes, this will still be a bit chaotic. Yes, we still have this suggestion box or random elf task board, but it's confined within elf operations. And if I wanted to really tighten it down so that people can't just start automatically adding new pages in North Pole HQ, we looked at just how easy it is to do that, where we can have people as a member or an owner and have permissions on pages and nested subpages, uh, matching those sorts of groups and access control. Thank you very much. Next time, we will be looking at things like this database, these different databases that the teams have already started making, and show either why this is a very helpful database, or where it's falling short. And we will be diving into relations of databases. So things like if I wanted to track the times that Dasher has gone on test flights, well, I would be able to make a database for my reindeer fleet and have another database called reindeer test flights, and have an entry that's related to the Dasher entry here, showing and tracking, hey, who has not gone on enough test flights and all that. So that's what we'll be covering next time. And as always, thank you for spending the time here to learn a little bit about the ins and outs of Notion. And this has now set the foundation for us to start to get pretty fun, get into some pretty cool features with Notion, especially around databases. So we didn't want to jump into that too quickly, because there's some core constructs here around what is a page, and how do you link, and what is your sidebar structure. But now that we've covered all of that, keep an eye out for I think later this week probably is when Mrs. Claus will have some availability, and make sure that people are ready to fit into their schedule the next training where we get to dive into some of that more fun stuff. I just added a QR code up to the top here of the stream. That is a link to our toolkit. So we've got a variety of things in there for different trainings, different articles, different workshops, handouts, field guides, EPUBs, ebooks. So feel free to scan that and check out what we've got in our toolkit, and leave some comments if you would like in the YouTube stream or the LinkedIn stream about what else you would like to see with these moving forward, especially as we start to get into the very powerful items with databases and relations and views and automations, and maybe even have time before Christmas to get into some of the API connectivity. But that's all I've got for today. So thank you all, and have a great holiday season. And maybe we'll be seeing you probably Thursday. But keep an eye on LinkedIn, and follow the N-Dash Consulting page to see when we've got our next series or our next session in this series scheduled. All right. Thanks, y'all. See ya.